Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Today we're having a conversation about the cabinet, the size of the cabinet, the significance of the cabinet, recent developments, leaks around what could likely happen as a result of the government of national unity. So let's get into it, straight into it. One of the things I've been asking myself is, when do you start measuring the administration, the effect of the administration, the impact of the administration? When do you start the 100-day counter, so to speak? President Ramaphosa is being inaugurated on the 19th of June. So inauguration day typically would be the day when we start saying, okay, now it's day one of the 100 days. I think measuring the 100 days will be important to get a feel for this administration and this government of fake national unity. I say government of fake national unity because it's not a government of national unity. It's ANC coalition with a +1 being the IFP so that they can govern KwaZulu-Natal and keep MK party out. Right. But when do you start measuring? You start measuring, I think, on the day of inauguration. And the next big milestone then becomes the appointment of the cabinet. The appointment of the cabinet typically tells you the team that the president has entrusted and can trust. And in a coalition situation, tells you, what kind of deals have been made and what kind of concessions have been made. Now, what we're hearing from the Democratic Alliance and from other sources that John Steenhuisen has been given assurance that he will be in the presidency and he will be the head of government business. Now, government business is a very serious responsibility, and it is typically a responsibility that is given to the vice president. So Paul Mashatile has been occupying that role as being the head of government business. This has been promised to John Steenhuisen. He will also be in the presidency, meaning that the Democratic Alliance will have line of sight in respect to what the presidency is doing at all times, or as best of a line of sight as they can. This makes me go back to the first conversation that was had about two vice presidents. Do you remember? There was a conversation that, in the coalition discussions, one of the things that they could consider is a second vice president. This looks like the second vice presidency because you take powers away from Paul Mashatile, you gave them to John Steenhuisen, you give him the same executive access that the vice president enjoys. And then basically he's a second vice president without the label second vice president. There's a funny thing that has been happening in this whole coalition situation. Number one, it's a DA-ANC coalition, but journalists and the media are afraid to call it a DA-ANC coalition when that's what it is. There's a second vice presidency that has been created and powers taken away from Paul Mashatile, but nobody wants to call it a second vice presidency. Right. Also, there's a challenge with actually calling it a second vice presidency because you'd have to actually amend the constitution, which they don't necessarily have the votes to do, considering that you have the EFF, the Progressive Caucus, the MK party coming in to occupy their positions in parliament. So they're not going to have the votes to necessarily do the amendments that they want to do. So this is perhaps the best way of providing that access to the Democratic Alliance, but without using some of the language. But I don't know if they'll be successful. If they are, then it definitely means that Paul Mashatile is in trouble. If they are, it means Paul Mashatile is in trouble because we've seen some reporting from News 24, about, Mashatile unmasked, etc., etc. News 24 generally has very aggressive reporting. We've also seen against Paul Mashatile. We've also seen some very aggressive reporting around, Gwede Mantashe. We saw Sunday World reporting that he may actually be arrested very soon. We'll see. There are always denials and counter accusations and counter. But we'll see soon because there have been some arrests that have happened. Zizi Odwa, we've seen it. We've seen also Nosiviwe Mapisak Nagula being arrested. So we don't know. Why am I mentioning the Gwede and Paul Mashatile questions? Because the framing statement I made was that we'll know who the president is going to trust, give responsibilities to on the basis of how he appoints his cabinet. Paul Mashatile has serious responsibilities. If those responsibilities are taken away and given to the Democratic Alliance, it then shows that there's a rupture between the Mashatile faction of the ANC and the Ramaphosa faction, if so to speak. But Gwede Mantashe is occupying a very big ministerial position right now in terms of being the Minister of Minerals. The Democratic Alliance has been very critical of him. If they get that cabinet position, that means that the ANC chairperson is now out. That means that the ANC chairperson will not necessarily last long within the structures of the ANC. So it's a hot topic, which is why we've seen some reporting saying that he's going to be arrested and some denials. We even saw a statement from the NPA. But let's go a bit further. The DA apparently has been offered 7 cabinet positions. And part of the deals that they were making was that they want those cabinet positions to be senior. What constitutes a senior cabinet position? You've got Gwede Mantashe in minerals, you've got Enoch Kotongwana in finance, you've got Thandi Modise in defense, you've got Joe Patla in energy, you've got foreign relations falling under Naledi Pandor, and apparently she's going to come back because the presidency has got 2 seats that they can give to somebody else. Then you've got Home Affairs, Aaron Motsoaledi, Justice, Ronald Lamula. There is a vacancy for police. The DA has spoken a lot about policing and how they want to have a devolution of policing so that in the Western Cape, the Democratic Alliance can have more control of the policing function. It's part of this thing which begins to become part of a secessionist without saying secessionist movement. There's a lot of DA thinking around the Western Cape becoming its own thing, and not necessarily part of South Africa, broader South Africa. They often make little side remarks around that. And we've seen even that there are political parties which have explicitly called for that. So the devolution of powers to provinces gives the Democratic Alliance more control over policing. Will they get this vacant post? Because that Bheki is not coming back to parliament. It's vacant right now. That's a senior cabinet position. Will they get it? Who knows? It's so important. I don't know if the ANC will give it away. But police is vacant right now. Public enterprises as well is vacant because Pravin Gordhan said he's not coming back. State-owned enterprises being run by the DA. They've already said they want to privatize water, privatize Transnet, privatize Eskom. Could this be something that is given to them? It may be something that the markets like. And before, Pravin Gordhan was all about privatization. So this may be something that is given to the Democratic Alliance. We'll see. Transport. Will they get transport? Water and sanitation. Will they get... These are serious ministries, senior ministries. So this is what they've said they want. They've not disclosed which one is their favorite, because Helen Zille said that if they say that, then Ramaphosa is not going to give it to them. But they've got a deal which says that they need to get some senior cabinet positions. Moving away from the Democratic Alliance, and this is still very much a preliminary conversation, just giving you some things to be looking out for, to be thinking about. The Democratic Alliance is in a tricky position because yesterday we saw some reporting that the cabinet is actually going to get larger, not smaller. But the Democratic Alliance has actually advocated for a smaller cabinet. They've advocated for no deputy ministers. They've advocated for the abolition of blue lights. So if the cabinet gets bigger because of their coalition deal, that's a bit of a contradiction. And I'm wondering myself, and we'll have to see, will John Steenhuisen use blue lights? Will the 7 ministers from the Democratic Alliance use blue lights? Or will they drive a Corolla? Will they reject all of the perks and privileges? We'll see. We'll see what happens. Outside of the contradiction of the DA, one of the things that people have been speaking about, and this is a very serious matter, is the super presidency. Under President Cyril Ramaphosa, several ministries were brought into the presidency. Some justifiably so, but others concerningly so. Right now, planning, monitoring, and evaluation is a ministry in the presidency. Electricity is a ministry in the presidency. State security is a ministry in the presidency. Women is a ministry in the presidency. There's also a minister without portfolio. It's a ministry in the presidency, right? So that's a lot of ministries that are in the presidency right now as things stand. And one of the concerns, particularly around the issue of state security, is that should a president have access to state security at that level, meaning that he's got supervision, direct supervision of the spies in South Africa, the intelligence in South Africa, a variety of things that could give him sometimes too much of an advantage. We've seen allegations, accusations of what the CIA did in America. Some of those accusations and allegations were true. And it seems as if they were abuses of power. It seems as if having that kind of proximity and access did create problematic behaviors. So many people have called actually for there to be, and the DA has been one of those people calling for there to be a parliamentary committee overseeing or having a line of sight of the presidency. Is that something that's now going to happen under the GNU of DA and ANC only? It's not a GNU, but it's a it's a continuity coalition. It's a RAND coalition. Let's be really honest. But that's one of the issues that has been raised around the presidency. Now, the last thing that just everyone needs to be thinking about is, are these ministers going to be able to effectively effect vision, considering the dynamics that are occurring between the two parties? Are they? What do you think? Before we go, before I make my final comments, we've had serious improvement with the subscriptions with the subscriptions. It used to be 89%. Now it's 86% of the viewers of this channel are subscribed. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed. But if you haven't subscribed, I'd really appreciate a subscription. It helps YouTube know that you appreciate and love this content. So just to conclude, I think we have to be paying attention to the first 100 days. We have to be paying attention to the roles that are occupied by particular ministries and ministers, because the challenges that are facing this administration are particularly high. Youth unemployment between the ages of 15 to 24 is 70%. Youth unemployment between the ages of 25 to 35 is almost at 50%, at 49%. So these are real challenges that are facing. The economy is not growing. The projections are that it's at 0.6 this year in terms of growth. That's very low growth. It needs to be growing at 5%. There are so many challenges with crime. We've seen that the crime rate has continued to go up. We've also seen that there are challenges with service delivery, whether it's electricity, whether it's water. These are real things. Some of the people in this coalition think that privatization is the answer. Some of the people don't think that. So it's going to be very important for us all to start really making assessments of the next 100 days. The next 100 days, I don't know why the media doesn't do this next 100-day thing consistently, but they do it in America, they do it in the UK, they do it in several countries, because it's important to see what a president is going to do and who he's going to do it with. So I think we'll try to do that on this particular YouTube page. So if you're interested in a blow-by-blow analysis of everything that's happening in the administration, I'm going to try to be one of those voices and platforms where that happens. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen in the South African media landscape. We've seen media houses are very soft on certain individuals, very hard on Zuma, very hard on Julius Malema. And it's fair. They need to be hard on everybody who is contesting for public office and who occupies public office or occupies significant positions of influence and power in South Africa. But then they're very soft on other people, the favorites. Pravin Gordhan tried to sell SAA for 51 rands. And some of the media houses overlooked that for years when many of us were raising the issue that this is a concern. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is we need new media. And this platform is going to be one of the new media spaces. Please follow, please like, please comment, please subscribe. Make sure that we can be part of the conversations about the important events that are occurring in Africa from an African perspective. Till the next one.